there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. And the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rahakodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. And as always, we give peace and salutations to the elect. In today's lesson, we're going to deal with the war in heaven, spoken about in the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter and the 7th verse. All right, as you can see here, it says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. And this particular scripture has been mixed and mingled with much mythology, fables, all right, stemming from heathenistic practices, which we know throughout the history, many of our people, all right, took hold to the myths and the fables of the heathen and mingled them with the scriptures. Okay, and that's exactly the common breakdown in world understanding of war in heaven stems from rhetoric written in the book of Enoch, which we're going to show you is a book that can't be attributed to Enoch himself, although there's history in the book that is actual true history. When you go into it, as we'll show you a few things, it does not, all right, it is not to be mated with the Holy Scriptures. And many of you Israelites out there are in serious error and danger because you are teaching this madness as it pertains to the war in heaven, which we're going to give you the understanding. And again, when we bring out the understanding of these scriptures, 2 Peter chapter 1 and 16, for we have not followed cunningly devised fables when we made known unto you the power and coming of our Lord Yahweh Shah HaMashiach, but were eyewitnesses of his majesty. Okay, let's get this in the NLT. It says, for we were not making up clever stories when we told you about the powerful coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai. Okay, they were actually, with him. All right, and even, till this day, Yahweh Shai's birth, all right, his resurrection, it's tied to, when you go into these different philosophies and, different religions, so-called, it's all mixed and mingled, like the Catholic Church. It's all mixed and mingled with, Babylonian, Egyptian, Canaanite customs. All right. And when you look up this word, cunningly devised fables, okay, because our people are heavy into mythology. All right. You have to understand, we were the people, all right, that were in the Assyrian, Neo-Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greco-Roman captivity. So these things have a stronghold on our people, but only the elect will come out of that madness. Now, when you look up the word cunningly devised fables, okay, and when you look up this word, let's look up the word cunningly devised, okay.
Strong's G 4679 Safizo.
Okay, and to become wise, to have understanding, to invent, to play the sophist. All right, sophist is one who taps into all kind of wisdom, wants to get too deep, to devise cleverly or cunning. And because you see words like hell, and because you see war in heaven, they can use those talking points, all right, and bring out these myths and stories that play on the emotions of our people. All right. But the truth has come out through the men of the Lord. All right. And when you go to what a fable is, okay, it's mythos. All right. Mythos or muthos, which is a myth. That's where you get the word myth. These are Greek words. All right. Showing you that we're in the revival of the Greco-Roman Empire. Okay. It says a speech, word, saying, narrative, or it could be a true narrative, or it can be a fiction, a fable, an invention, falsehood, myth, fable. Okay. And when you go into it, the fictions of the Jewish, which were our people, Jews, not Jewish, but the Jews, all right, which Peter, okay, he was a Jew. So he grew up around the Jews and he understood the rhetoric associated with many of those of the circumcision. Okay, many of the Jews of the circumcision got into those. When you go into the Hasmonean dynasty, when you go into the Greek Empire, okay, many of our people, were in league with the Greeks and took to their customs. Okay, this is exactly what you see happening today with this concept of eternal hell and all of these various different things we're defending against. These are fictions and fables. All right. It says the fictions of the Jewish theosophists and Gnostics. A lot of this stuff comes from, the Gnostics. When you go into this seven heavens, which the book of Enoch talks about, those guys from Mississippi were tapping into that Gnostic madness, going to the Barbaros and all those various different names and, ideologies. This is what our people have always done. And again, there's nothing new under the sun. It says, especially concerning emanations and orders of aeons called fables and so forth. All right. And Paul warned Timothy, who ultimately was going to rule over and lead the church of Ephesus, watch over that church, which Ephesus was associated, all right, with many idols and myths. All right. Remember the great goddess Diana, the queen of heaven. That was a big thing in Ephesus, which is why Paul warned Timothy, all right, to basically check those women when he got over there. Don't suffer them to teach or usurp authority, because they were very proud. But again, he breaks it up. He breaks it down here. 1 Timothy 1:4. Neither give heed to fables or endless genealogies, which again, those of the circumcision were using, their priest card, their genealogies to, hijack churches and, get dominions, get tithes. Okay. This is what was happening. So neither give heed, all right, to fables and endless genealogies, which ministers questions rather than godly edifying. And this is what we see happening now. Although we're bringing out edification as pertaining to these things, what are we arguing against? Jake wants to say that, there was a war in heaven. How does that tie to anything that we're going through now? What exactly would that do for you as an Israelite to know that in heaven there was a war and angels were kicked out, as if the Heavenly Father doesn't have control of the spiritual realm? That's not edifying, but we're going to bring out the understandings, because you have a lot of new listeners who are into these things. You can tell by some of the comments, over the years. And it's time to let that madness go. Okay? These fables. Okay? As a matter of fact, what we'll do is we'll go here and we'll type in, all right, what are some of the Jewish fables Paul warned about in the Bible? Okay. All right. When Paul warns about Jewish fables in the Bible, he's cautioning against unbiblical traditions, myths, and speculative stories that were being mixed into Christian teachings. Christian being the church of Yahweh Shai. Okay, they were called Christians in Antioch first. They were all followers of Yahweh Shai, which the first initial hardcore followers of Yahweh Shai were of the circumcision, Jews who were raised as Jews. Okay, but eventually the word went out to the scattered Israelites who had been raised in all of these myths and we were raised in a lot of these different myths and fables. It says particularly from rabbinic or mystical traditions, which that's where you get the book of Enoch, as we're going to show you. Okay, ultimately that book was written, all right, sometime after the rebuilding of the Second Temple. When you look at some of the things written in it, is directly speaking of history associated with the Greeks. Okay, the Second Temple period, the Seleucid Empire. All right, but mystical traditions that distracted, all right, from the gospel of Yahweh Shai. Where does Paul mention this? Titus, okay? Neither giving heed to Jewish fables. This warning is tied to false teaching spreading among early believers, especially from some time within the community of the Jews who were promoting legalism, myths, and genealogical speculations. They were doing too much. Okay? Mythical expansions of Old Testament stories, non-biblical embellishments of Old Testament figures like Moses, Enoch, and Abraham. Okay? So, let's see here. Yep, and when it says genealogy, some Jews prided themselves on physical descent from Abraham or Levi and used genealogical speculation to assert spiritual superiority or leadership. Okay, and we'll get back into this. But when we bring out the truth of these scriptures, we must do it according to what's written in the volume of the book. Okay, what we have. So we're not here to bring you these cunningly devised fables. Okay, when you get, okay, the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter, and it talks about a war in heaven. Okay, let's get it. Revelation 12:7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. Now, first and foremost, all right, what dragon is this talking about? It's talking about the same dragon, right, that's ultimately spoken of earlier in this chapter. All right, which is what? Rome. But we know, pursuant to the book of Daniel, Rome will be revived in the latter days. See that? The Western Roman Empire will be revived, and that's where we're living now. Okay, that's why you have Elon Musk with his space dragon, Trump boasting in the Golden Dome, the sixth branch of the U.S. military being the Space Force, although that's, as we'll show you, associated with protecting against, missiles from other countries being dropped on America. It's also associated, all right, with preparing for war coming from outer space. You see that? And when Yahweh Shai returns, all right, which he's going to come in the clouds, right? The Bible depicts, all right, when you go line up on line, precept on precept, that there will be a war in the heaven. Now, the Bible speaks about 3 heavens. Okay, we'll get into that. The Bible speaks about 3 heavens. You have the heaven associated with when you look in the skies, where birds fly, where you see airplanes. That's an aspect of heaven. See, it talks about under heaven, you see judgment take place, right? And then you have the aspect of, the heavens where the stars and the different planets. And then you have the 3rd heaven, like Paul talks about, all right, in 2 Corinthians. He was caught up into the 3rd heaven and saw things that he couldn't even utter. All right, the book of Enoch talks about 7 heavens and all of these different things that the Bible doesn't describe. Okay, again, yep. First Kings 8:27. But will God indeed dwell in the earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, much less this house that I've builded. And there's many scriptures. All right, Nehemiah 9:6. All right, thou, even thou, O Yahweh, alone. All right, thou hast made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their hosts, the earth and all the things that are in the seas and all that is therein, and thou preservest them all, and the host of heaven worship thee, the angels. All right. And Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:2 says, I was caught up into the third heaven 14 years ago. Whether I was in my body or out of my body, I don't know. Okay. It says, but I do know I was caught up to paradise and heard things so astounding that they could not be expressed. All right. So the scriptures speaks about, all right, 3 heavens. Okay. Now, in the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter, all right, let's read it again. It says in verse 7, and there was war in heaven, and we're going to break that down. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Now, again, what dragon is this talking about? Let's go earlier in this chapter, right? And let's get here. Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. This is basically speaking of the Roman Empire, man, having and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, which are the Israelites, right? The Jews, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, were basically under the Roman captivity, the 4th beast, pursuing the Daniel the 7th chapter, and did cast them to the earth. Being cast to the earth, meaning you're being brought to a lower state. You're no longer in your rulership. Okay. And the dragon stood before them. Now, is this Satan himself? Well, who is this dragon talking about? And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. What is this talking about? Okay, this is going into the history associated with the birth of Yahweh Shai, man. In Matthew, the 2nd chapter, where King Herod, all right, saw the signs associated with the coming and the birth of Yahweh Shai, and he wanted to put him to death. And who was King Herod? Okay, of the Herodian dynasty. Okay, Herod, all right, which you got to watch when you get into the scriptures. You see Herod. Not all of them are the same one. All right, the very first Herod, which was the son of Antipater the Idumean or the Edomite, was the one during the time of Yahweh Shai. You had another one, all right, who was responsible for ordering or having John the Baptist put to death. Then you have Herod Agrippa, which Paul dealt with. As a matter of fact, it gives you the understanding, but as you read here, all right, but the name of a royal family that flourished among the Jews in the time of Yahweh Shai and the apostles, all right, during the Roman Empire. Herod was the son, all right, was Herod the Great was the son of Antipater the Idumean, which is the Edomite. These were Edomites, appointed king of Judea by the Roman Senate. Okay. And pretty much when you get into the history, right, here in Matthew, the 2nd chapter, okay, those Amalekites, the Lord said he would have war with Amalek from generation to generation. The Amalekites, Herod, all right, pretty much wanted to slay the Messiah. He wanted to slay him so that he couldn't fulfill prophecy, man. All right. And he tried to hide it under a cunningly devised plan. Matthew 2:8. Okay. He saw the chariot. So he said here, and he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. And when you have found him, bring me word again that I may come to worship him also. So he wanted to worship him, but we really know what he wanted to do. He wanted to devour Yahweh Shai. Okay, but that's history you can get into. But again, when you get into this chapter, right, just like in the Greek, the Egyptian empire, they wanted to off Moses. Okay, they was killing all kind of or murdering all kind of Hebrew Israelite male children. So when you read this, Revelation 12:4, and his tail drew the third part of the stars in heaven. This is going into what happened to the Jews, which there was some northern kingdom scattered here as well, during this empire, and did cast him to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered to devour her child as soon as it was born. So this is speaking of Yahweh Shai. And she brought forth a male child who was to rule all nations with the rod of iron. And they understand our prophecy, so they wanted to what? Off the Messiah. But the Most High is in control. So Yahweh Shai was born. All right. His father, his mother, and him fled, all right, Herod, and went to Egypt. And eventually they came back to Nazareth, where he was raised. Okay. After Herod died, eventually they came back from out of Egypt, which it was a big community of Jews over there. So they fled to Egypt, and then they went to Nazareth. Okay. And eventually Yahweh Shai was born, and his death, burial, and resurrection took place, and he was caught up unto God and his throne. You see that? So as you keep going, jump into verse 7, and there was war in heaven. See, the book of Revelation jumps from time period to time period. And again, you have to have the Holy Spirit to be able to discern when and how to apply it. Okay. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against, all right, and the dragon fought and his angels. So again, this is speaking of end time prophecy of something that's coming, because when Yahweh Shai returns, all right, let's get it here in the book of Revelation, all right, 1:7, it says, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all the kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so Amen. So when Yahweh Shai returns, he's coming in the clouds. Okay. Isaiah 19:1, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud. And how is he going to ride on that cloud? Through his angel, his son, just like he did in ancient Egypt. He sent his son, the angel. Okay. He got the credit, but it was his angel that he sent to deliver us and do all of those great wonders in Egypt. The angel of the Lord. Okay. Daniel 7:13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came in the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Okay. So as you keep going, Matthew 24:30, and then shall appear a sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn when they see of the Son of Man in the clouds. Okay. Yep. Matthew 26:64. Thou hast said, nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Okay. So when Yahweh Shai returns, he's coming in the clouds, in the sky. Okay. Let's get Revelation 19. All right. We're lining everything up, line upon line, precept upon precept as we bring this out. Okay. And I like to flush things out. Okay, yeah, we could have just went straight into the breakdown, but I want to give you things surrounding it and precepts as well, so that you can write these things down and be ready to defend the gospel. All right. And as you hear people come with these arguments and different ideologies, all right, you're stable. Okay, because a lot of you are tossed to and fro when it comes to the understanding of these scriptures. You listen to all of these various different camps. You listen to this. You're still bringing in stuff from the world. You got this book. Look, this Bible is not to be mated with none of these different philosophies. Okay. The book of Enoch opposes the lunar calendar. It also tells you that 4,500 feet men who were angels who fell from heaven, came to earth and had sex with women. We're going to show you where a lot of these myths, all right, come from. All right. And I've done the research. We've read these books. We've tapped into this stuff. All right. But ultimately, we're living in a time where many of you are not enduring sound doctrine. So we have to bring these things out. Now, Revelation 4,500 foot, man. Come on, dog. Revelation 19:11. And I saw heaven open, the coming of Yahweh Shai, and I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, which is that chariot, And he that sat on him was called faithful and true, and in righteousness and judgment doth he make war. See that? When Yahushua returns, he's coming to make war. Okay, and when he returns, as we're going to show you, Revelation 17 and 14, okay, speaking of these different nations, and particularly the EU, NATO, right? Revelation 17 and 12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom of yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind. All right, and again, it says 10 horns, right? When you read about this dragon here in Revelation, the 2nd chapter, again, it has 7 heads and 10 horns. And we always go into that understanding. I'm not going to go too deep into that here in this lesson. I have a whole lesson. Apostles got whole lessons on Revelation 17, Revelation, 16, all of that. We have those breakdowns. Okay. But this is speaking of this beast system that we're living in. All right. Which really, it goes back to the ancient Western Roman Empire. Okay, which the ancient Western Roman Empire had its vassals, its subordinate countries that made it a beast system. Okay, and it says here, Revelation 17 and 13, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. All right, but at the very end, they're going to ultimately renege on those agreements. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is King of kings and Lord of lords, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. You see that? So again, these are going to make war with the Lamb. Okay, that's what it's talking about. All right, here in Revelation 12. All right, in 7, and there was war in heaven. This ain't something that already happened. Okay, there was never a war in the spiritual realm. Okay, because where does that madness come from? Okay, let's get it. All right, and I had the notes. I wrote these notes down before. All right, but I don't have that notebook with me right now, and I don't have that old computer where I used to have these notes. All right, this was pre-Chat GPT, but now we can just, get these things to pop up in Chat GPT or Google it, right? It says, the book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish apocalyptic text attributed to Enoch, and it can't be attributed to Enoch. Okay, it's basically written by many Jews, all right, who lived, all right, from, when you look at it in the history and the things that are written from around 300 to 100 BC, all right, during the time of the Greco-Roman Empire, okay, and many of those religious leaders, all right, when you get into the Hasmonean dynasty, all right, dealing with the Greeks, all right, sold out, all right, and a lot of them, mixed and mingled, all right, the Greco-Roman customs into the scriptures, man, and had their writings, okay, but it can't be attributed to Enoch, all right. It speaks about things that were going on, all right, during the Seleucid Empire, Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, some history of what happened during the building of the second temple as well, written in there. Okay, these are things that Enoch couldn't have written about. Now you'll say, well, maybe it was a prophecy. No, he's talking. When you read it, it's talking about it, all right, as if he's there, because these are Jews that were living around that time. Okay, writing things. So some of the history written in the book is actually true history. You don't deny that. All right. But when you go into it, it goes completely off, and it is not to be linked with Enoch himself, man. Okay. We have everything we need. I've done various videos on Enoch that give you a clear understanding of how we are to view him and what he means to us in our walk. Okay, if you need those videos, just ask or go to my page, do the search and type in Enoch. That's a topic I constantly go into. Okay, so it says, the book of Enoch is an ancient Jewish apocalyptic text attributed to Enoch, the great grandfather of Noah. contains a detailed narrative about a heavenly rebellion, which can be understood as its version of a war in heaven. This is where Jake getting that stuff from. This story is most prominent found in the book of the Watchers, which is in the book of Enoch, which is the first section of Enoch, chapters 1 through 36. Here's a summary of what he teaches about this celestial conflict. So as you can see, when you see Jake arguing about the war in heaven, it already happened in the war in heaven, they're talking about this madness. This is where they're getting it from. In the heavens, you know, the Satan was kicked out of heaven. And we went into that. We broke that down. Lucifer, you know, again, these are all things that have been mixed and mingled with the scriptures and has brought about confusion. But the minute the Lord have came, all right, to give you the true understanding, it says the Watchers in their rebellion, a group of 200 angels called the Watchers were assigned to watch over humanity. Where the hell is that in the scriptures? Led by Semjaza, okay, and Azazel, these angels descended to Mount Hermon and rebelled against God's order. Their rebellion wasn't a war in a military sense, but a spiritual revolt. Come on now. They took human women as wives and taught forbidden knowledge to humanity. So that's where a lot of these wicked things that are being taught today, they come from these 4,500 feet angels. When you get into it, okay, led a rebellion and they came down and they had sex with women, and they associate that with what's written in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay. A lot of them. But Jake is just all over the place. All right. Genesis 6:1, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, the daughters were born unto them. Again, this is the sons of Adam through Seth. Okay. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And this is speaking of the holy seed making marriages with the heathen, in particular, who was around as well. The daughters, the sons and daughters of Cain were around. Okay. So when you get into that, which is then is now, what has Jake always done? What did King Solomon do? Okay. He got with the heathen women and made marriages. You're not supposed to make marriages with heathen. The book of Nehemiah, Jake was raising their children to speak heathen language and not, you know, it was a mess. It was basically out of order. And basically this is the first recording of that holy seed doing that. Okay. NLT, the sons of God saw the beautiful women and they took any they wanted as their wives. And when you see this word son of God, okay, you can't get bugged out. There's about 3 or 4 different understandings of the sons of God in the scripture. You got the sons of God. Yeah, you have the sons of God in the heavens. Job describes the angels, the sons of God. All right. But there was sons of God on earth, and it's tied to obedience. All right. Let's see here. Let's see here. John, all right, 1 verse 12, as many as received him, to them, all right, gave he power to become sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, his rank, everything, you know. But again, sons of God does not always mean an angel in the heavens, man. And I have a lesson on that. I'll reload it, maybe this week, next week, I'll reload that. But there's different, all right, facets. There's different understandings when you go into the scriptures. Yahweh Shai is known as the son of God. Solomon was known as the son of God. Adam was known as the son of God. Sons of God are on earth as well. Okay, the sons of God were the name of the holy seed before they were called Israelites. Okay? Goodness gracious. So when you read this chapter, which I have various videos on it, all you have to do, you can look at these titles. Okay? Yeah, that's the one I was talking about, different classes of the sons of God in the Bible, obedience. reiterated a few points on Genesis 6, the sons of God, quick class on the sons of God. Sons of God are fallen angels. Okay. Sons of God, Nephilim, who are they? Sons of God, I have them. Sons of God from Seth to Abraham, our history. Okay. The sons of God saw the daughters of men. So there's various videos that we have done on this. Okay. And this is just my page. You have the apostles, elders, brothers that have always went into this. This is where we learned it from. Okay. So what these people teach is that basically when you read this is not talking about Adam's lineage through Seth. This is speaking of angels that came down from heaven and had sex with women. And then when you read verse 3, it says, and the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. So this was speaking of Israelites. Okay, the chosen seed going off. Okay, yet he is also flesh. Again, it said at the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking and being merry. This was speaking of people. Okay, but then it really bugs them out when they see this term giant. There were giants in the earth in those days. Okay, and when you go into this word giant, it just means fallen ones. But again, we have various videos on it. Okay, giants in the Nephilim. All right, it says a bully or a tyrant. All right, but when you really get into what it means what? To be cast down, to fall. Okay, to fall short. And that's what happened. Adam and the sons of God fell short. Okay, so the Lord brought a flood, but he left one of them, namely Noah, as you read 2nd Esdras, the 3rd chapter. All right. As a matter of fact, let's get that. Let's get 2nd Esdras, the 3rd chapter, real quick. And we'll jump right back into the point. But let me get this. 2nd Esdras chapter 3. And 8. And every people walked after their own will. This is before the flood, and did wonderful thing and despised thy commandments. Not angels that fell from heaven. The sons of God who were given the righteous ways despised them, went off, mingled among the heathen, tripping. And again, in the process of time, thou broughtest the flood upon those that dwelt in the world and destroyed them. And it came to pass in every one of them that as death was to Adam, even so the flood was unto these. They suffered with what? The flesh. All right. They went off. Nevertheless, one of them, one of the sons of God, thou leftest, namely Noah, who came from that lineage from Adam through Seth, with his household, of whom came all righteous men through Shem, through Arphaxad, all the way up to our forefather Abraham, man. See that? So this history in Genesis bugs a lot of people out. Okay, but basically the word Nephilim or Napoleon means to fall, to waste away, and the fallen ones. All right, Jake fell away. This is our history. This ain't no history tied to some angels coming down 4,500 feet tall. Could you imagine that? Now, men were bigger before the flood, but 4,500 feet? No, this is ultimately men struggling with flesh. Okay? Men in the flesh struggling. Okay? So that's where you get that madness. And this is what this is what these bug outs are tapped into, and they can't let it go. Okay? So a group of 200 angels called the Watchers were assigned to watch over humanity, led by Shemjaza. And you can go into the book of Enoch and read it yourself. All right. We ain't just making this up. All right. And Azazel, these angels descended to Mount Hermon and rebelled against God's order. All right. Their rebellion wasn't a war in the military sense, but a spiritual revolt. They took human women as wives and taught forbidden knowledge to humanity. The scriptures don't tell you that. Examples include metallurgy, enchantments, astrology, and cosmetics, which ultimately all of that goes back to the philosophy of the serpent seed, which ultimately is fulfilled in Cain. Okay. And after the flood, Ham continued all of those different demonic teachings. Okay. That's why you had the Tower of Babel. Those were just seed of Ham. You know, the Canaanites eventually came on the scene. Okay. They held all of that nasty knowledge. And when Esau came into power as the Greeks and Romans, he went right back to Ham to get what ultimately is rightfully his, that demonic way of life. Okay. And that's what rules the world unto this day. Okay. Again, all of the nations on the earth stem from Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. There is no nation on the earth, all right, that is half angel, half human. Okay. You have GOCC that says these particular angels held on to the bottom of the boat and survived the flood. So it's all kind of madness that you see these people coming with, and you have to be mindful of it, man. Azazel in particular is blamed for teaching humans how to make weapons in war. Okay. Well, in the scriptures, it tells you that ultimately Cain's lineage was responsible for first making weapons in war because they were blessed with the sword, just like Esau. Okay. Consequences of the rebellion. The union of the watchers with human women produced the Nephilim, giant offspring who devoured humans and corrupted creation. See that? And these giants, see, when you get the scriptures, let's get Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter in the GNT real quick. And I'm going to do this lesson as well. Hold me to it. If I ever forget and you see I ain't did it in like a month, just remind me. I want to tap into how Solomon gives you history of what happened with the sons of God. Okay. What they really were doing. Because Moses gives you a very abridged version of the sons of God lied with the daughters of men, and the Most High became frustrated. But there's more to the story. Again, when you read Moses's account, okay, it's very abridged, and there's things that were left out on purpose. The Lord told Moses not to write some of the things that he saw. We can read about that in 2nd Ezra, the 14th chapter. Okay. So what Jake does is, instead of applying a spirit, they go to these different philosophies to bridge the gap. No. Okay. So Solomon gives you history on what happened with the sons of God, how they got into idolatry and sexual immorality and just living in a corrupt way, which ultimately they started following the ways of Cain and his family and his lineage. Same thing Jake doing today with following Esau's way, being thugs, stealing from one another, committing adultery. That's not associated with the righteous way that we were given. And what does it lead to? A fall. But we're going to get back to the war in heaven. All right. But I just wanted to read this. Solomon in Wisdom of Solomon 14 gets into that history of, all right, the sons of God who were known as giants, or the Nephilim, the fallen ones. All right. Wisdom of Solomon 14:6 in the GNT. This is how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants, this is a nation of people. Okay. They got proud, was dying away. Why? Because of sin. The hope of the world escaped on such a boat under your guidance and left the world a new generation to carry on the human race, which is Noah. Okay. A blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive. You see that? So again, these people are caught up in all of these myths when we have the understanding and the volume of the book of what really went on in Genesis, the 6th chapter. And I'm going to do a lesson on it. Although I have went into it, I want to come at it from the perspective of Solomon's account in the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 14th chapter, because he gives you a very detailed account of what actually were the sons of God doing. Okay. Human pride, as he talks about here. Okay. Jake started to what? Worship idols. Okay. So this proud race of giants is not talking about some giant Nephilim who came down from heaven and would start looking for coochie. No, stop with that garbage. The consequences of the rebellion, the union of the Watchers with the human women produced the Nephilim, giant offspring who devoured humans and corrupted creation. The earth cried out to heaven because of the violence and corruption. God sent the archangels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel to deal with the Watchers. Azazel is found and cast into the darkness into the final judgment. Semjaza and other Watchers are also bound, and their children, the Nephilim, are killed. What? The heavenly verdict. God pronounces eternal punishment on the rebellious angels. The Watchers beg Enoch to intercede for them, but God rejects their petition through Enoch. The fallen angels are to remain in chains until the day of judgment. They will be cast into the abyss of fire. So this is where Jake getting a lot of this madness from. Okay? The war in the book of Enoch is not a single battle, but a moral and cosmic struggle. It's a war between obedience and rebellion, heavenly order and earthly corruption. The angel's descent represents heaven invading the earth with destructive knowledge, violating divine boundaries. Craziness, man. Okay? Comparison to Revelation 12. The book of Revelation speaks of a literal war in heaven where Michael and his angels fight against the dragon Satan. Enoch's story predates this and influenced Jewish and early Christian apocalyptic thought, but it focuses more on the corruption of the divine beings and the judgment of God. So again, they mixed and mingled that madness, right, with the Bible. And when you go really into the fallen angels, it goes back to all of these different idols, man. Okay? You read about it in the book of Enoch, right? But before that, right? And really, this was Jake. Jake has an imagination, man. Going off, man. Being mixed and mingled among the heathen and learning their works, man. This is what Jake has always did. The thought of the Jews, all right, in fallen angels, all right, developed the fallen angel idea. Earlier mythologies had similar motives, all right, though not identical. So they took the Mesopotamia, which was Nimrod, the Babel, all of that confusion. Legi gods, all right, the Anunnaki, the Akkadian, rebel against the high gods because of hard labor, not cast down but replaced by humans. Not evil or demonic, just tired guys. The guys got tired. Okay? Oh, my goodness, man. So these are basically just this same stuff rehashed, but added. Jake just added madness to it, man. Canaanite, all right. Ugaritic myth. El, Baal, Mat, and others represented divine conflict. Some guys descended from the underworld, and return, not exact fall, but the ideas of conflict and judgment exist. Greek mythology, Titans versus Olympians. All right, the Titan Nomaki has parallels. Older divine beings rebelled and are cast into Tartarus. That's hell. Okay. All right. This is basically what Jake is into today, even today. All right. Prometheus defies Zeus by giving fire to humanity and is chained in punishment. All right. Note, some Jewish writer, or the Jews, all right, our people of the Hellenistic period were familiar with Greek stories, and Enochic literature may reflect Greek-style divine rebellion themes. That's what the hell is going on in the book of Enoch. Those were Jakes that were in that Greco-Roman life, Okay. Writing these things down, man. Giving their perspectives, being too deep, sophists, getting to all this different esoteric knowledge and doing too much. In Persia, all right, they had the gods. Okay. So Jewish tradition, or the tradition of the Jews, especially in the book of Enoch and related apocalyptic texts, is the first to fully describe fallen angels in a way that matches later Christian and Islamic beliefs. While earlier mythologies had rebel gods and divine conflict, only Jewish apocalyptic turned angels into moral rebels cast down for sin. And then they use Genesis 6. So this is where all of that madness goes back to, man. Now we're going to tap into, real briefly, we're going to tap into the what it's really talking about. Okay. Because I had a bunch of other stuff that I wanted to get into, showing you the contradictions of the book of Enoch. But the war in heaven, all right, because the book of Enoch is bugged out, man. All right, they tell you the origin of sin started with these angels. The scriptures tell you the origin of sin is with Adam and Eve. Gnostic-like secret knowledge. Okay, the book of Enoch goes off, man. Okay. There's all kind of stuff, and this is stuff I had this. I wrote all of this stuff down before, but I have to find that binder. But we're living in a time where knowledge has increased, so we can just type it into here. And I can actually share this link, I believe, share it with some brothers. But all right, we'll get into that maybe in another lesson, because I've already went a little over. So we're going to get into the war in heaven, man. Okay. What the Bible tells you. we wanted to show you the madness in its origins. Okay. From the book of Enoch, which cannot be attributed to Enoch. Why would Enoch be writing about? Because when you read the book of Enoch, they're cursing out the leadership. All right. For what they were doing in the rebuilding of the temple. Okay. The Greek Empire. It's literally it's cursing out Jews for temple corruption. Again, this is history that actually happened, but again, when you go into in a grand scheme of things, these were Jews, all right, who got into that deep esoteric wisdom and just started doing their own and writing all of this madness, man. And these things were around, all right, when Paul and when Yahweh Shai and the church and Paul and them were on the scene. These are things that they had to combat. Okay, when you read, oh man, when you read in Acts, all right, they screaming about great Diana, all right, as Paul was, going around teaching and rebuking these myths. He encountered, Israelites who were associated with these customs. They wanted to fight him. They wanted to kill him. Okay. As a matter of fact, let's see here. Acts 19 and 21. After these things were ended, Paul proposed in spirit when he had passed through Macedonia and Achaia to go to Jerusalem, saying, after I have been there, I must also see Rome. So he was in these areas, man. And when he went there, Acts 19 and 24, for a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, which made shrines for Diana, brought no small gain unto the craftsmen, whom he called together with workmen. This is an Israelite, probably Sonetter, right? Demetrius, we will call that Sonetter, getting into all these different, the myths, right? It says, let's read this in the NLT. I just want to give you an example, man. Hopefully you're being edified. Okay. I like to go into the history. I like to, so when you read this stuff, you know what's going on. Cause now you're looking at Jake. It's the same damn thing. Acts 19 and 27, of course. Let's see here. Acts 19 and 25. He called them together along with others employed in similar trades and addressed them as follows. Gentlemen, you know that our wealth comes from this business, but as you have seen and heard, this man Paul has persuaded many people that handmade gods aren't gods at all. He has done this not only here at Ephesus, but throughout the entire province. Of course, I'm not talking about the loss of public respect for our business. So they were losing money. All right. The teaching of the Church of Yahweh Shai was causing many to turn from idols. I'm also concerned that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will lose its influence, and that Artemis, the magnificent goddess worshipped throughout the whole province of Asia, another myth, the queen of heaven that goes back to Babel. But again, it's made its way here to the Greco-Roman Empire, and all around the world will be robbed of her great prestige. And this anger boiled. At this, their anger boiled, and they began shouting, "Great is Artemis," or Diana of Ephesians. Soon the whole city was filled with confusion. Everyone rushed the amphitheater, which you have the amphitheater here in Babylon, right? Dragging along Gaius, right? And Aristarchus, who were Paul's traveling companions. They all had the names of the different captivities they were in, just like we'd have heathen names because they were raised as heathens, but they became followers of Yahweh Shai. It says traveling companions to Macedonian. All right. And as you keep reading, you can read, but Jake was always into this madness. It's the same thing now. So when they hear us speaking against hell, when they hear us speaking against, angels coming down and having sex, they get mad. They get mad. They want to kill you. They tell you crazy. So the war in heaven ain't talking about the bullshit you just heard from the book of Enoch. But it is talking about the second coming of Yahweh Shai and how the powers that be, this beast system, the revival of Rome, is going to fight against him. Revelation 12 and 7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels, and they prevailed not. Neither was there any place found for any more in heaven. All right. In their rulership. All right. Being cast down from heaven means what? Being cast down from your rulership. Let's prove it. Let's get Lamentations 2. All right. Lamentations 2 and 1. How hath the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with the cloud of anger, and cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel, and remembered not his footstool in the day of anger. Were we kicked out of heaven? No. We lost ultimately our rulership. Our kingdom was rent. The Lord sent the Babylonians on us. We were through. Okay. Isaiah 14, which we have lessons on this. Okay. The wicked. All right. Isaiah 14 and 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down from the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Okay. The scriptures say I saw Satan fall as lightning. I did a lesson on that. These things symbolize, all right? And the word Lucifer just means what? All right. Hayalal, light bearer. Describing the king of Babylon. Who's the king of Babylon? The elite, the Edomites, in particular the Amalekites that rule out of London, the bankers. Okay, the light bearer. What do they call themselves? The Illuminati. That means the bearers of the light. This is speaking of the elites. Okay, fallen from heaven. What does heaven mean? Shemayim, it could mean the heavens, the sky, right? But it could also mean, all right, a lofty position, all right, to be lofty. And Esau is lofty, just like Capernaum, all right, Capernaum, okay? In the book of Matthew 11 and 23, and thou Capernaum, which are exalted unto heaven, should be brought down to hell. See that? So these things are symbolized, okay? Again, going back to Revelation 12 and 7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. All right, they lost their rulership at the coming of Yahweh Shai. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, who was his angels? Okay, his AI, his technology, his fighter jets, his military. Okay, they have a lot on the left hand. Okay, I mean, the stuff that they have, we haven't even seen a little bit of it. But at the coming of Yahweh Shai, they're going to bring it all out. And even when they're warring against each other. Okay? And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now has come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our power and the power of our anointed. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. So if this already happened, are we in the kingdom? And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. Okay? Because remember, Herod wanted to slay Yahweh Shai before he grew up and was sacrificed. But because he did grow up and became a sacrifice and raised from the dead, we now have victory. Now we have a testimony. Okay? So it jumps. It's jumping from time period to time period, man. Okay? Because just like Herod came down with great wrath, Esau is getting ready to come down with great wrath, knowing that ultimately Yahweh Shai is about to return, man. That's all this is talking about. This is not talking about angels being kicked out of heaven. Okay, when you look up this word angels as well, it just means messengers. It's another thing. When you see the word angel, it's not always talking about an angel in the heaven. Angelos. That's where you get it. Los Angeles, Angelos, a messenger, an envoy. What is an envoy? One who is sent. Okay? A messenger, a representative, especially on a diplomatic mission. So the UN, okay? I mean, at the end of the day, it's an ambassador. Okay? One who is sent, an angel, a messenger from God. Okay? So on the left hand, you have that order as well, man. And ultimately, when these people, when Esau and these people come with their shit, it's going to be a left-handed power tied to it. And they're going to be cast out. They're going to lose. Okay, this is the same thing written in Daniel 12 and 1. And at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble. All right. Such, because again, Yahweh Shai is coming with a heavenly host. Okay, let's get Revelation 19 and 13. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, because this is describing the same thing. Revelation 19 and 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness doth he judge and make war. Okay, so with Esau and his left-handed power, he's going to try to make war with Yahweh Shai and the angels. Okay, this is symbolizing a leader of a military coming to destroy, man. That's what this chapter is about, invading the earth and coming to destroy. The word of the Most High. But when you read verse 14, Revelation 19 and 14, and the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. It's the angels. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword. So again, it's going to be armies. When you look up the word Lord of hosts, right? Let's look it up. The Lord of hosts. We always hear that word, the Lord of hosts. What does host mean? Tazabah. Shout out to the beloved brother Tazabah. All right. Out there in Arizona. And if there's any other Tazabahs in the right spirit, shalom to you. Tazabah. That which goes forth, army, warfare, organized army, angels, warfare, serve. So the Most High has an army, a military. And Michael is in that. See that? Michael is in that. So when Yahweh Shah returns, he's coming with armies of angels. Okay? But when you read in verse 19, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on a horse and against his army. This is the war in heaven, nigga. What's wrong with you guys? It's just so clear. You got to say nigga. Because come on, man. Goodness gracious. We have everything we need in the scriptures, man. God damn, boy. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war with him that sat on the horse. Against Yahweh Shai and the angels, man. Daniel 12:1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth against the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even unto that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one who shall be found written in the book. I mean, and it all ties. See, these different prophets received all of these different visions, but in their own way. Okay, when Yahweh Shah returns, Revelation 20:11, and I saw a great white throne and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away. And we know he's going to have angels with him. And there was no place found for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were open. Judgment time. Okay, and the book of life was open. The elect get delivered during that time. That's all this is talking about, man. Goodness gracious, man. One event, man, the return of the Lord. Revelation 19. Ain't no other event after this where people get cast into the lake. This is where the lake begins. America's destruction and the destruction of the armies of the heathen and so forth, man. Chaos on the earth. Somehow that ain't enough for Jake. Somehow this right here, what we're reading, that's not enough. Nah, we got to go to Enoch. Come on, man. So the beast and the kings of the earth are going to gather together to make war against Yahweh Shai, man. That's what the war in heaven is. Let's get 2nd Esdras 13 to end it off. And we can go, man, there's so much more we can bring out on Enoch. There's so much more we can bring out even on this topic. This is 2nd Esdras 13 GNT, verse 3. As I watched, the wind brought with it out of the sea what looked like a man, and he was flying on the clouds, the chariots. When he turned his face, everything he looked began to tremble, and when he spoke, everyone who heard his voice melted like wax and fire. Yeah. I looked again and saw a crowd too large to count. They were people gathered together from all parts of the world to fight against the man who had come up out of the sea. Okay, which the sea, the Shemayim represents the waters. Okay, the heavens are waters as well. Okay. As a matter of fact, when you look up the word heavens, in the Hebrew, Shemayim, we looked it up. Shemayim, heaven, sky, abode of the stars, visible universe, sky, atmosphere. That's waters as well. Okay? The waters, the Shemayim. Okay? So when Yahweh Shai returns, right? It says, and I saw a crowd of people too large to count, and they were gathered together from all parts of the world to fight against the men who come up out of the sea. Then I watched the man carve out a high mountain and fly up on it, the chariot. I tried to see the place or region from which the mountain was carved, but I couldn't. Then I saw that all the people who had come to make war against him were terrified, but they still prepared to fight him. When the man saw the great crowd advancing to attack him, he did not take any weapon. The only thing I saw was what looked like a stream of fire coming out of his mouth. He sent a flaming wind from his lips and a storm of sparks from his tongue. The stream of fire and the flaming wind and the great storm combined and swept down on the crowd that was coming to attack, and he burned them up in a single moment. That crowd, too large to count, vanished, and there was nothing left but powdery ashes and the smell of smoke. Okay? That's going to be in heaven. Again, the war in heaven. And when Yahweh Shai returns, there's going to be a war. Okay? As a matter of fact, let's get Isaiah 34. Isaiah 34 and 5. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Okay? Come on, man. Come on, man. And you can read more, but at this time, Babylon is going to be getting destroyed. Because these nations are going to be shooting missiles on Babylon, and then as the Lord is returning and in the sky, they go turn around and fight him. See? Very interesting vision. You jump to verse 30. Let's see here. Wow. Ooh. I started at 26. 25. The vision, the meaning of this vision, the man you saw coming up out of the sea represents the one whom the Most High has kept ready for many ages. He will free the world he created and establish the new order for those who survive. The new world order, the true new world order. You saw fire, wind, and storm going out of the man's mouth, and you saw that without the use of any spear or any weapon, he destroyed the great crowd that was advancing to attack him. This means that the time is near when the Most High God will begin to free the people on earth. And at that time, everyone will be close to panic. They will begin to make war against one another. All right, World War III, city against city, region against region, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. When that happened, the signs I told you about earlier will take place, and then I will reveal my son, whom you saw as a man coming out of the sea. When they hear his voice, all the nations will leave their own territory and forget the wars they have against one another and come together in a great crowd too large. As you saw in your dream, the nations will unite with the single purpose of making war on my son. He will take his stand on the top of Mount Zion, and New Jerusalem will be seen by everyone. We're going to get beamed up, changed. All right. It will be complete and fully built, just as you saw in your dream, the mountain carved out, but not by human hands. That's the chariot. Then my son will condemn the assembled nations for their godlessness. Okay. That is what the storm meant. He will confront them with the wicked plans they have made and also with the torments they must endure. That is what the flames meant. So the torment is coming when he returns, man. It ain't. Come on, man. There ain't no eternal torment. Okay, like come on, dog. Okay, Habakkuk described this. Okay, never read that. Let's get a little bit of Habakkuk up in there, and we'll close it out. Okay, let's see here. Habakkuk 3. And 4, he comes with the brightness of lightning. Light flashes from his hand. That's that fire coming out there where his power is hidden. He sends disease before him. He commands death to follow him. When he stops, the earth shakes. So it's going to be a chaotic event. Okay? Verse 9, you got ready to use your bow. You got ready to shoot your arrows, which is that fire. Your lightning split open the earth. Okay? You marched in anger, and in fury you trampled the nations. You went out to save your people, even to save your chosen. All right? And you can read more on that. But again, this war in heaven in Revelation 12, it not only has it not happened already, it's talking about something that's going to happen upon the return of Yahweh Shah. We gave you the right precepts. Revelation 19 and 11, and I saw heaven opened, the Shemayim opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on was called Faithful and True, and he come to make war. The war in heaven is the heathen, the nations fighting him as he comes. I don't understand what more you need to see. And we can go to more, but we're going to leave it there. And hopefully I'll edify it on to the next. We moving on. Shalom.